Hello, everyone. Welcome to Zen and Fanfics. Today we are featuring part 2 of What If Deku Was Aizawa and Midnight Child? The story is written by TheDemonHiei on fanfiction.net. Before we start, please like and subscribe for more content. Now let's dive into the story. The students, Shota, and 13 all walked into the USJ, and the students were soon mesmerized as expected. The DMN thing looked like some kind of theme park that people would book tickets months ahead to get into. There were multiple stations that resembled different areas that each had different kinds of weather and terrain. There was a park, a lake, a mountain, and more that was enclosed in this huge space, and each place was important. Something that Shota and Nomuri taught Izuku when he just started to train to become a hero was that being a hero was about protecting and saving people above all else. Yes, there would be situations where you would have to fight villains, but most situations would involve a hero saving a civilian. Bad things happen every day, and it is a hero's job to make sure that the people of their respective city stay safe no matter what things may happen. Izuku took that lesson to heart and knew that he was more of the combat type of hero, but he did have skills that could be used in rescue situations. Mainly his capture chain, while it was used for combat, Izuku could do what he did to Ochaco in the entrance exam. He just had to make sure that he was gentle. He didn't want to wrap the chain around whoever he was rescuing too tight, or he may break some of their ribs. Wow, this looks like a freaking amusement park, Kirishima said excitedly. A shipwreck, a landslide, a fire, a windstorm, etc. I created this training facility to prepare you for dealing with different types of disasters. I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, but you can call it USJ. 13 said proudly and with spirit. Just like Universal Studios Japan. Izuku and the rest of the students thought with weird looks on their faces. Hey, shouldn't All Might be here already? Oh wait, let me guess. He booked an interview instead. Shota asked annoyed. Actually, it's something else, I'm afraid. He did too much hero work on the way to school this morning and used up too much of his power. Now he's in the teacher's lounge recuperating, so we will have to start without him. 13 informed Shota, who just rolled his eyes. That man is the spitting image of irresponsibility. Still, it should be okay with just the two of us. Shota said, a bit annoyed at the number one hero. How is All Might the number one hero, and yet the guy doesn't even have a car? Momo asked, incredibly confused. Probably thinks that with that incredible speed of his, he doesn't need one. Hell, why waste money with gas and car insurance when you can move at a speed like that? Izuku asked, and Momo nodded since he had a good point. The clock is ticking. We should be getting started. Shota told 13, who nodded. Excellent, but before we begin, let me just say one thing. Well, maybe 2 or 3, possibly 4 or 5. 13 drawled on, but the students interrupted her. We get it, they all yelled, and 13's sweat dropped. Yes, well, listen carefully now. I'm sure that you're all aware that I have a powerful quirk called Black Hole, and I can use it to SCK up anything and turn it into dust. 13 explained proudly. That's right. You have used Black Hole to save a lot of people in all kinds of situations. Izuku said while chuckling at Ochaco jumping and down. That is true, but my quirk could very easily be used to kill. In fact, some of you also have powers that are dangerous. In our superhuman society, all quirks are certified and regulated, so a lot of us often overlook how dangerous they could be. Please don't forget that if you lose focus, your quirk could become deadly, and no hero wants that on their resume. We must use our quirks to help people, not to kill. Is that understood? 13 asked, and the students nodded seriously. What 13 said was true, and Izuku, as well as the others, took it to heart, knowing that they could never forget that lesson. While he was glad that his quirk wasn't deadly, Izuku knew that if he went wild with his chain in a fight, that someone could get hurt. The same could also be said for Momo, because if she created something too powerful or dangerous, then someone could end up getting killed. Izuku broke out of his thoughts when 13 continued speaking. Even if you're trying to do something virtuous like rescue someone, there's always a chance that things could go badly, so be careful. Thanks to Aizawa's fitness test, you have a solid idea for your quirk's potential. Not only that, but thanks to the combat training you got from All Might, you also got an idea for how dangerous your powers can be when used against other people. These are good lessons to have at this point, and you will use those lessons for this class. 13 explained. Good to know that test was actual for something and not just Dad having a field day with our misery. Izuku thought amused. Today you will be learning how to use your quirks to save people's lives. You won't be using them to attack enemies or each other, only to help. After all, that is what being a hero is all about, ensuring the safety of others. That is all I have to say. Thanks so much for listening. 13 said with a bow, and the students started cheering. But Izuku just widened his eyes when he saw something in the distance. Hey, Dad, is that part of the training? Izuku asked, and Shota wondered what his son was talking about until he looked to where Izuku was pointing, and his eyes widened. There was some sort of purple circle in the middle of the USJ, and to answer his son's question, no, it was not part of the training. The purple circle then took form of some sort of ghost, then spread across the USJ, and out came some man with a hand on his face. He was not the only one. More and more people were coming out of this purple smoke, and they did not look friendly. Shota knew what this was, and he knew that they were in trouble. Stay together and don't move. 13, protect the students. Shota ordered, and the students wondered what was going on. Hey, wait a second, has the training started already? I thought the training today was going to be us rescuing people. Kirishima said confused, but Izuku spoke up. Those aren't fakes, bro. They are actually villains, and this ain't a DMN test. Hey, Dad, I can't get a hold of Mom, and the alarms aren't going off. Someone must be blocking communications. Izuku said worriedly, and Shota widened his eyes when he saw the no-signal text come on Izuku's phone. So, you punks used the press as a cover, and sneaked on a campus, is that it? Shota asked with anger in his voice, and the students widened their eyes in fear. Even if that is true, what the hell do a bunch of villains want with high schoolers like us? Momo asked in a scared tone. That's a good question, but don't worry, we will get out of this. So stay calm, all right? Izuku said as he put his hand on her shoulder, and she smiled and nodded. Where is he? Where is All Might? I went through the trouble of bringing all of these friends so that they could meet him. We don't want any of these kids. We want All Might, the symbol of peace. I can't believe he isn't here, but maybe if we kill a few of these kids, he will come out to play. The man with a hand on his face said evilly, and the teachers and students widened their eyes in horror. There. Question was answered now. The villains that had breached UA were not here for any of them. They were here for All Might. Somehow the villains got information that All Might was supposed to be one of the teachers for this particular class, but they didn't know that he wasn't there at the moment. That guy with a hand on his face seemed to be quite serious about killing the two teachers and the students, so Shota knew he had to act quick and already activated his capture gear. So, you criminals are here because you want a piece of All Might, and somehow you got information that he was teaching this class. Shota surmised. The question is this the only part of the campus that they have infiltrated, or are they attacking all of the other spots in UA? Izuku asked, and his dad wondered the same thing. They couldn't tell, because their communication was clearly blocked. This has to be a planned ambush. They clearly had an objective for coming here, and they planned everything out. Somehow, they knew that All Might was supposed to be here for this class, and they knew that this is a place that is isolated from the school building. They must have figured out that there would be less pros here and could take them out with ease, as well as us. Then All Might would be their main target after we were dealt with. The usually silent Todoroki calculated, and everyone widened their eyes at how right he was. 13, you need to get them out of here and alert the main campus as soon as possible. Actually, if they have the ability to block our sensors, that may not work, and thanks to Izuku, we know that they are jamming our personal communications. Izuku, maybe your call to your mom didn't work because you just didn't have a strong enough signal. Kaminari, try using your quirk to contact the school. Maybe yours will go through. Shota ordered the blonde-haired boy. Yes, sir, Kaminari said as he activated his quirk. Dad, you should leave a couple of us with you. Even if we get out of here, we don't know if any of us can get back in. You might be a pro, but this could go a lot better if a couple of us stayed behind. Izuku said logically, but his dad shook his head. That may be true, son, but as a pro hero, it is my job to make sure that you and the others don't get hurt. Besides, you can't be a pro if you only have one trick. 13. I will leave the evacuation to you. Shota said as he went down to fight the villains. As soon as Shota got to where the villains were, they immediately knew who he was and began to attack. They thought that if they ganged up on him, they would take him out easily, and that is just what Shota wanted them to think. The group that specialized in long-range quirks were easily taken out by Shota since he erased their quirks and used his skills to knock them out with his capture scarf. The brawlers of the group immediately charged at Shota since they felt he couldn't take them all on. In reality, the only way those villains could do any damage to Shota was if they got close to him, but he had taken precautions to make sure that never happened. So here Shota was, using his capture scarf like it was an extension of his own body and throwing the villains around like they were nothing. Just like Izuku, Shota was very mobile and could dodge any punch or kick thrown at him, which is what he was displaying currently. So, which one of you gooder punks is next? Shota asked tauntingly, and the villains got angry. There he goes trying to intimidate us. He's strong, and thanks to those goggles, we don't know whose quirk he is erasing. How annoying. The worst thing about pro heroes is that they live up to their hype. The villain with a hand on his face said in annoyance as Shota kept thwarting the enemy's plans. During this time, Izuku and his classmates, as well as 13, were heading to the exit to get the hell out of there and get some backup. Izuku saw his dad beating up the villains, and that let him know that they were most likely amateurs or people that Handguy picked up off the street. Still, Izuku didn't like that they were leaving his dad alone, especially since those villains could barricade the door or something. However, Izuku knew that his dad's mind was made up, so he didn't argue with him. Izuku figured that if he, Todoroki, and possibly Bakugo stayed behind, then they could have these villains down in no time. Todoroki may have weirded him out, and Bakugo was a jackass, but that did not mean that they were not strong. The three of them could easily have helped Izuku's dad and took some of the pressure off of him, but they were just students, and he knew his dad wouldn't allow it no matter how much sense it made. Then Izuku felt someone tap his shoulder as they were running, and he saw it was Momo. "Are you comfortable with leaving your father behind?" Momo asked worriedly, and Izuku sighed. "No, I'm not comfortable with it, but he is a pro hero, and it clearly shows. Most of these villains seem like amateurs, people that Handguy must have picked off of the street. Dad clearly can handle them no problem, and it seems like they don't have a solution for him. Besides, once we tell All Might and the others what's going on, they will bust in here and give him a helping hand. There shouldn't be anything to worry about," Izuku said with a smile, and Momo smiled back. "We are near the exit, everyone, hurry," Tinya ordered, but stopped as that purple ghost villain suddenly appeared. "There is no escape for you," the ghost said coldly, and everyone grimaced. "Damn it, Dad must have blinked," Izuku thought in a worried manner, but noticed the ghost man started speaking. "It's a pleasure to meet you. We are the League of Villains. I know that it's impolite, but we have invited ourselves into this haven of justice to say hello. Besides, doesn't it seem like the perfect place for All Might to take his last breath? I thought he was supposed to be here today, and yet I see no sign of him. There must have been some sort of change in plans that we could not have foreseen. Oh well, I guess it doesn't really matter since I still have a role to play," the ghost man said uncaringly, but Izuku just glared at him. "To answer your question, no, it doesn't seem like the perfect place for All Might to take his last breath. You, on the other hand," Izuku said coldly as he was about to activate his quirk, and so was 13, but two of his classmates jumped ahead. "Take this." Bakugo and Kirishima both yelled as they leapt towards the villain. "Bakugo, Kirishima, don't," Izuku yelled, but it was too late as they made contact, and smoke encapsulated the area. "Damn it, I cannot see with the smoke surrounding us, so I cannot cancel his quirk," Izuku thought annoyed. "Did you really think we were just going to sit back and let you wreck the place?" Kirishima asked with a smirk, but that fell as soon as he heard laughter. "You students definitely live up to your school's reputation, but you should be more careful, children. Otherwise, someone might get hurt. Now scatter," the ghost man yelled as the students became trapped in the shadows that surrounded them. The wind force was so strong that it could carry the students away. Izuku immediately grabbed his capture chain and threw it, and luckily it wrapped around one of them pillars. He grabbed Momo and told her to hold on tight, and she expressed her gratitude. Tenya had managed to get a couple of classmates out, but most of them still were in that smoke. The next thing Izuku knew, his capture chain flew off of the pillar, and he and Momo were currently falling from the sky. Damn it, Yaoyorozu, hold on tight. Izuku ordered. Got it, Momo said, though she was blushing a bit. Then they both heard a scream. A little help, please? Kyoka Jiru shouted, and Izuku widened his eyes and threw his capture chain. Grab on, Izuku commanded, and he was relieved when Kyoka caught it. Izuku then threw another piece of his capture chain into the mountain and thanked God that it stayed in place. This allowed Izuku, Momo, and Kyoka to land safely, since all they had to do was jump down a few feet and they did not sustain any injuries. Both Momo and Kyoka thanked Izuku for his quick thinking, and Momo even kissed him on the cheek, to which Izuku turned and blushed, but said that he was just glad they were okay. Then the group realized that they were not alone. Well, what we have here? Some fresh meat, a woman said evilly with a sinister smirk on her face, and more villains showed up. Seems to me that we have some people who want their asses kicked, Izuku said coldly as Momo got out a couple of weapons for her and Kyoka. What did you say, you little brat? A villain asked angrily, and the others were just as angry. Enough of this. Why are you people even here? Kyoka asked in fear and in anger, but Izuku just answered her. Remember what the ghost villain said? They came here for All Might. They must have known our whole schedule and who would be here. I'm guessing that when we were all panicked by that fake alarm sound off by the media, one of them must have snuck into the school files. Dad and the other teachers were too busy trying to get the media off of school grounds, so they were just waiting for the perfect time to attack. It's just like Todoroki said, Izuku said in a worried tone, and the two girls widened their eyes. Look at that, the brat is scared. As he should be. One of the villains said menacingly, but Izuku just scoffed. However, clearly they didn't think this through, as all they wanted was All Might. If they did, then that ghost guy would have teleported us to a location that would give each of us a disadvantage. It would be a problem for Yaoyorozu and I to be in that snowstorm, since the cold would make it difficult for us to fight. Not only that, but it seems that Sue is in the shipwreck zone, a perfect place for a frog-like hero. Clearly they thought we would just be pushovers. What a serious error in judgment, Izuku said coldly as he, Momo, and Kyoka got ready to fight. Oh yeah, say that when, wait, where are my bullets? A villain yelled in irritation as his quirk suddenly didn't work. Oh, did I do that? Izuku asked with a smirk, and the villains widened their eyes when they saw Izuku's hands suddenly have shuriken in them. Izuku threw the shuriken, and they hit the villains that had noticeable weapons, whether they be quirk-based or not. Then the shuriken seemed to set off an electric shock that stunned the villains and sent them to the ground. The other villains were shocked and started to dash toward Izuku, but he just sent his capture chain out and wrapped it around a villain, then spun him around, hitting the others. He made sure to keep a good distance. He's like a mini Eraserhead, a villain yelled out. Not quite. I'm the better-looking Eraserhead, Izuku said coolly as he mimicked his dad and was using the capture chain and his fighting skills to take down the villains. He's so cool, Kyoka said as she and Momo watched Izuku in amazement. He certainly is, but he's not alone, so let's give him some help, Momo said, and Kyoka nodded as they dashed towards the villains. Seeing Izuku fight the villains and take them down gave the girls some confidence, even though they were still a bit scared. Who could blame them? They hadn't been at UA for very long and just graduated junior high. Now, they were fighting villains on what was pretty much their second day of training. It was a lot to take in and to handle, but all of the students knew that they had to do something or they were going to die. Momo was very skilled with her staff, and she was knocking out villains left and right. She wasn't holding back after seeing Izuku take on the villains first. She felt that Izuku was right. These villains clearly thought that they were all pushovers, and seeing how they were being beaten by students, they clearly were not very skilled. Even Kyoka was pushing them back with her sound waves and using the sword that Momo gave her for those who came up close. While this was going on, Uraraka and Todoroki fell out of the portal and into what looked like the landslide zone. Both of them were trying to assess the situation, but first realized that one was on top of the other. Their eyes were locked, and their lips were inches apart. Ochaco quickly moved from on top of Todoroki, who had an unusual blush on his face, and Ochaco had that same blush. Little did the two know that this was the first NTMT interaction they had with someone of the opposite gender. Sorry about that. Ochaco apologized while still blushing. Don't worry about it. I'm just glad you are okay. Todoroki said honestly, but his heart was still racing. How have I not noticed how cute she looks with those rosy lips? Wait a second, what I am thinking. Todoroki thought as his mind was racing 1,000,000 miles per second. Little did he know that he was not the only one. Holy CRP, I never truly noticed how handsome he was, not to mention those muscles. Hold on, why I am thinking like this when it comes to my classmate? Ochaco screamed in her head. A portal opened, and then out came more villains who still wore those cocky smirks on their faces. Ochaco and Shoto were secretly glad that they showed up, since it would distract them from the awkward moment they were having. It was also good because they could try and gain more information from these villains about this attack once they beat them. At least that is what Todoroki was thinking. Both of them looked at each other and nodded. Then they got in their fighting stances and were ready for anything. All right, boys, take out the half and half punk, but make sure you leave the girl in one piece so we can have some fun with her. One of the villains snarked and the others laughed in agreement. The fact that you think that is going to happen is laughable, Shoto said in a cold tone, and Ochaco smiled while blushing. Oh yeah, we'll show you. Get him, boys, the villain said as they started charging, but Shoto stood in place with that cold stare of his. Not a second later, ice formed from the soles of Shoto's boot, and then the ice expanded, freezing all of the villains that were charging at him, and Ochaco. Speaking of which, he made sure not to go overboard since the ice could have frozen Ochaco the same way it did the other villains. Ochaco looked in amazement of Todoroki's power. She knew that he was strong, but seeing his power in person was so cool in her opinion. Aren't you all embarrassed to lose to a child? Come on, at least put up a fight. You're all adults, for God's sake, Todoroki said in a judgmental tone. How the hell is one kid so strong? One of the villains asked as they were all trying to break out of the ice. All you need to know that is you will all die if you are exposed to this cold long enough. Luckily, I am aiming to become a hero, so I will avoid from doing something terrible like that. But since none of you are going anywhere, why don't you tell me and Yurikara about this great plan you villains have to kill All Might? Todoroki asked, and the villains were trembling at the boys. Cold stare, and thanks to the ice covering them. All right, we'll talk. The key to the plan for us to kill All Might is Nomu. You know that big bird monster? He has super strength, speed, and even more quirks than that, so we thought that he would be enough to take down All Might. We were just here to make sure that none of you got in the way, but that took a turn too quick. One of the villains said honestly, and both Ochaco and Todoroki's eyes widened. Wait, how is it possible that the bird monster can have that many quirks? Ochaco asked terrified, and Todoroki wanted to know the answer to that too. How the hell should we know? We didn't ask any questions when we got this job, since it sounded like it was going to be so easy. Nomu was going to take care of All Might, and we would destroy you kids, but you all had to go ahead and ruin it. One of the villains said bitterly, and Todoroki just rolled his eyes. Oh yes, that is all so bloody tragic. Now back to what you were saying about the job you got. Who exactly is your leader when it comes to this so-called League of Villains? Is it that teleporting ghost villain who spread us all around this DMN facility? He sure sounded like a criminal mastermind, Todoroki said while glaring. No, it's Shigaraki, the one who has those creepy but hands all over him. His quirk lets him decay anything he touches. None of us wanted a problem with him. The villain answered quickly, and Todoroki nodded in acknowledgement. I see. Thank you for the information. I hope you all enjoy prison. Let's go, Uraraka, Todoroki said while walking away, and Ochaco nodded. The two walked away, leaving the villains in the ice, but Todoroki made sure that it would only make them stay in place, not kill them. Both of them were glad to have the information so they could get a sense of what was going on, but the information did unsettle them a bit. How was it possible that bird monster had more than one quirk, and how did he have so many? It was also not good that the leader apparently could decay anything that he touched. Todoroki, thank you for saving me and protecting me from those villains. I am more the rescue kind of hero, and I'm still figuring things out in terms of combat. Ochaco said honestly, and Todoroki smiled. Don't worry about it. I was not going to let any one of them harm you. However, I think it is time that we find the rest of our classmates and tell them what's going on. We have to figure out a way to get the teachers in here and to get us out. Todoroki said seriously, and Ochaco nodded. Then they left the landslide zone. Back with Izuku, Momo, and Kyoka, they were just about done taking care of the villains that were in the mountain zone. It was kind of tough because there were so many, but it was clear that the villains were not well trained and were just picked up off the street. They were overwhelmed by Izuku's techniques, Momo's staff skills, and the sound waves from Kyoka. It also did not help that Izuku had nullified some of the villains' quirks, making it easy to attack them. Demon, look at you all. You look like you just got your asses kicked. Izuku taunted the villains who growled. Damn it, how the hell can kids be this strong? A villain asked frustrated, and the rest thought the same thing. Is it not obvious? UA isn't the top-rated hero school for no reason. They accept students who have learned the basics to understanding and controlling their quirks. Not only that, but all of us have trained to make sure that we can fight and use our quirks in a delicate balance. Such things are needed if you're trying to become a top hero, something that you villains never even considered or tried. Now your fate is being defeated by a trio of high school freshmen. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Momo said in a demeaning tone. You know what she said? Kyoka said, amazed at how smart Momo was, but the three were shocked when they heard a cry of pain. SHD, that sounded like Dad. Okay, I need you guys to go back up to 13 and the others. I don't see Ida, so maybe you want to get All Might and the others. Preserve your strength, because these may be getting back up. In fact, Yairozu, if you can make some rope or something and subdue these guys. I'm going to go help my dad. Hopefully some others like Todoroki or Bakugo will show up, but I can at least try to get Dad out of there. Izuku said, but Momo was shocked. Aizawa, you can't go over there on your own. Those villains have too powerful of quirks. Momo said horrified, but Izuku did not flinch. Yes, quirks that I can nullify. Look, we don't have too much time to discuss this, and you have seen how much, but I can kick. The bottom line is I gotta go help Dad since he's all alone. You guys go rest up and meet with the others, all right? I'll be fine, Izuku assured with a smile as he used his chain and swung off towards his dad. He will be fine, Kyoka said with a smile to Momo, who sighed and nodded. I know, but I'm still worried. Yet we should probably meet up with our other classmates. Momo said, and Kyoka nodded, and they went towards the entrance. Izuku quickly swung to where his father was. If his memory was character, then his dad was in the middle of the USJ. When he got to the area, the sight that was before him would haunt him forever, since seeing his dad in such pain was something that Izuku never saw before. That ugly bird monster had his father down on the ground and was currently slamming his head into the pavement. It seemed that his father's bloody face wasn't enough, and that hand guy put his hand on his dad's arm, causing the skin to decay. Izuku looked in horror, but knew that he had to stop this, and wrapped his chain around the hand villain. Get over here, Izuku yelled as he used chain to throw the hand villain away from his father and into a pillar. Izuku was not done as he then wrapped the chain around the bird creature and crashed into him, getting him a good distance away from his father. In a fit of rage, Izuku did not miss a beat as he soon turned to the ghost villain and nullified his quirk, causing him to be paralyzed, then threw some of his shuriken, stunning the villain. After making his presence known, Izuku got in front of his father in a protective stance, still scared of what he saw, but making it known that it stopped here. Meanwhile, the villain with the hands all over him, now known as Shigaraki, wondered what in the hell just happened. Everything was going well, with Nomu beating the CRP out of Eraserhead, and Shigaraki was enjoying himself by using his quirk decay Eraserhead's arms. Then out of nowhere he felt a chain wrap around him, and then soon he was flung in the air before he hit a pillar. Then this kid with a visor on knocked Nomu away and somehow stunned Kirojiri. He was very much annoyed. TCH, who the hell is this brat? Shigaraki asked, annoyed. Izuku. Shota whispered out in pain. Don't speak. Conserve your energy while I try to figure out a way out of this. Izuku ordered, but his mind was racing on what to do next. Before he knew it, that bird creature was back up and was rushing towards Izuku, who didn't have enough time to grab his dad and get away. Izuku grabbed one of his kunai and get in a defensive stance, but widened his eyes when a wave of ice blocked the Noma's path. Izuku looked to the right and saw Todoroki and Ochaco. Both had their eyes widened when they saw his dad. Next thing he knew, Bakugo and Kirishima showed up, which was good because that ghost guy was back on his feet. Well, look who's joined the party, Izuku said, relieved with a chuckle. Holy CRP. What happened to Mr. Aizawa? Kirishima asked, horrified. That ugly but bird is what happened. Listen, Uraraka, I need you to get him out of here. We will hold these guys off, but we can't fight if we are worrying about him getting even more hurt. The other should be near the entrance. Please take him there, Izuku said seriously, and Ochaco nodded in acknowledgement. Ochaco used her quirk to make Shota weightless and carried him away with the boys watching her back. The ghost villain tried to make a move, but was brought down by Bakugo, who informed him that he figured out his secret. Apparently, the ghost villain was not immune to physical attacks, seeing as though he wore that neck brace. Physical attacks could land if they were as well-timed as Bakugo was, and now they just had to worry about Momo. It was at that time that Todoroki shared some information with his classmates. You guys, there is something that you should know. Earlier, I made one of the villains tell me what their plan was to kill All Might, and they said it was this bird creature. Apparently, he has super strength, super speed, and even more quirks than that, so we need to be careful, Todoroki said seriously, and the other boy's eyes widened. The bird creature somehow had more than one quirk? How is that even possible? Was this thing even human, or was it some kind of lab experiment gone wrong? Izuku wondered if his quirk would even be of use, considering that he didn't even know if he could nullify a person who had multiple quirks. This fight would be probably the most difficult one of the day, and hopefully with this group they could win, but Izuku wasn't so sure. That's right, Noma here is the solution for taking out the symbol of peace, which means he will make quick work of you kids, Shigaraki said with a maniacal laugh. We'll see about that, Kirishima declared as they all got in their fighting stances. Momo had immediately dashed towards the group, and Kirishima used his quirk and met him head-on. It didn't do much as Momo was just too strong, though Kirishima stood his ground and did not get knocked back. Todoroki used his quirk to freeze the side of Momo. Then Izuku saw his chance to get some damage in. Izuku immediately sent out his capture chain to wrap it around Noma's arm, but imagine his surprise when the arm shattered. Then imagine his surprise when Noma's arm came back as good as new. What the hell? Izuku asked in shock, and the other boys were just as shocked. Nomu also has the quirk that allows him to regenerate his limbs in a quick fashion, not to mention that he also has the quirk of shock absorption, Shigaraki said evilly, and they all widened their eyes. Well, my shuriken will not be much help, Izuku thought in distress. Just then the Nomu went to Bakugo in an incredible speed. Bakugo managed to dodge, but he released his hold on the ghost villain. Now they had to worry about him, Nomu and Shigaraki, as if they didn't have enough to worry about. The boys attacked, but Nomu was too strong and too quick, not to mention that Ghost Guy was making things difficult. That being said, they were not going to give up as they kept fighting full force. Izuku managed to get some damage on Shigaraki after he nullified his quirk, but the damage was only minimal as Nomu seemed to show up every time he had an advantage. They all hoped that the teachers or All Might would show up soon because they couldn't keep this going forever. Nomu was the most annoying of them because no matter what Izuku and the others did, he just came back with a vengeance. Izuku knew that he had to think of a new plan if they were going to stay alive. Guys, we have to change it up. This isn't working, Izuku said worriedly, and they all knew he was right. Do you not understand? There is no way you can win. You will all die, Shigaraki started to say, but then the sound of the door busting open caught them all off guard. Looking towards the entrance, feelings of relief and tears of joy were being shed by the majority of the students of Class 1A. All Might, the #1 hero, had finally made it to join in the battle against these invading villains, and by God did he look angry. The man was not in his hero outfit. Rather, he was in a suit and tie, but it didn't matter. Izuku and his friends could finally sigh in relief, knowing that the odds were turning in their favor. Have no fear, students, because I am here, All Might roared, ready to beat the villains and end this nightmare. All Might walked to the middle of the USJ, anger clear on his face after seeing so many villains and the fear on the faces of his students. He should have been here earlier to prevent all of this, but he was busy resting after all the heroic acts he committed that day. It was why he was late in the first place, but he could not just ignore those that were in need of help. He was the #1 hero for a reason, and that was his main job, even though it was backfiring today. He was angry as he saw the states of his co-workers, 13 and Shota Aizawa. 13's helmet had been smashed, and she was lying on the ground unconscious, clearly in a lot of pain, but she was not nearly as in bad of shape as Aizawa was. The man clad in black was the worst out of all of them, as his face was all bloody and part of his arms seemed to be decayed. He felt incredibly guilty because he should have been there to help his co-workers, but this is unfortunately where they were now. Looking down at the center of the USJ, All Might couldn't help but look at his students with pride at how they were handling themselves in this situation. Young Aizawa, young Todoroki, young Bakugo, and young Kirishima were only first years, and yet from the way they were carrying themselves in this situation, you would think they were pros. They seemed to be in a jam, though, as they were no doubt fighting the main 3 villains of this group. Those said 3 main villains looked the most menacing out of the group and were clearly harder to take down than the other ones. One villain had on some suit, but was covered in black smoke. The other was a man with hands all over his body. Was he the one that turned Aizawa's arm into decay? What really freaked All Might out was the villain that looked like a giant bird. It seemed like he didn't have any speech function, as the bird monster was just looking at him with a blank stare. All Might was broken out of his thoughts when one of the lesser villains spoke up. "Holy CRP, it's All Might. I have never seen the guy in person before." One villain said scared, and another was the same way. "I didn't expect him to be so huge." Another one shouted, as the villain's confidence was draining by the second. "This is no time to talk, you idiots. If we strike now, we can kill him, dash." A villain tried to say, but was soon hit by All Might. In a matter of seconds, All Might took down the remaining lesser villains. None of them stood a chance against the #1 hero. Izuku and his classmates looked at their teacher with amazement and relief. Things would finally go their way. It had not been looking too good when that bird monster was tossing all of them around, and it made matters worse that they had to deal with the hand guy in Warp Gate. Now that he was here, though, All Might could focus on the bird, and they would focus on the other 2. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong when Aizawa and 13 didn't answer my calls. So I hurried on over, and I ran into young Ida on the way here. And he told me of the villainy at play here. "I am proud of you students for standing so tall against these criminals, but things will change for the better now that I am here." All Might declared with fire in his eyes. "You ran into Ida? Great, that means he must be going to get the teachers." Kirishima said in relief as some of the pressure left his body. "That's right, young Kirishima. Now could one of you fully explain the situation here?" All Might asked as he glared at the villains in front of them. "These villains came here with the objective to kill you, All Might, but you weren't here, so they started attacking us. The guy with the hands all over him is the leader of this bunch of criminals. Apparently, he is the one who gathered them all together. The purple ghost guy is probably one of his lieutenants or something. He has this quirk that allows him to teleport people anywhere he wants. Finally, there's that bird thing. He's the worst out of him because he's super strong, and apparently he has multiple quirks." Izuku said seriously, and All Might widened his eyes. "Hold on. Young Aizawa, what do you mean he has multiple quirks? That should be impossible." All Might asked, shocked. "Somehow that thing has shock absorption and can regenerate himself. I know that because when I threw my shuriken at him, the electric stun that went off didn't even affect him. Then Todoroki was able to freeze the bird creature's arm, and I destroyed it with my chain, but it didn't matter as arm grew right back. I don't know where they found this guy, All Might, but they clearly weren't joking when they said he was the key to their whole plan being a success." Izuku said as All Might nodded in understanding, and then Shigaraki spoke up. "That's right, All Might. The only way you could defeat Momo here is if you tear off his flesh." Shigaraki said evilly. You seemed so reliant and happy with your henchmen, so much that you unleashed them onto first-year students of UA. These are just kids. And yet you didn't hold back. All Might asked furiously, and Shigaraki just scoffed. I didn't have much choice. They were threatening me and my companions. Besides, it's not like these students of yours are angels either. The one in black nearly killed me as he wrapped that DMN chain of his around me and threw me into a pillar. Not to mention the bomb one attacked Kirojiri and forced him into SBM Sin by putting sparks on his shoulder. And that Ice Brat and Rock Brat put the damage on Nomu. What kind of hero does something like that? You think that you can get away with doing whatever you want because you say it is for the sake of others. Well, you know what, All Might? That pisses me off. Why do people get to decide that some violent acts are heroic and others are villainous? Casting judgment onto what is good and what is evil. You think you're the symbol of peace? HA, you are just another government instrument of violence, and violence brings more violence. I will make sure the world understands that once you're dead, Shigaraki declared evilly as he finished his monologue. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life. You are the ones who came into our school and started wrecking the place. We defended ourselves. We didn't just start fighting for no reason like you villains did. Kirishima yelled in anger, and his classmates nodded. Young Kirishima is right. You're nothing but a lunatic. Criminals like you always try to make your villainous actions sound noble. But admit it, the real reason why you're doing this is because you like it. Isn't that right? All Might asked with a glare, and no one could see Shigaraki's eyes narrow. He has me figured out. Shigaraki thought, amazed at All Might's deduction. Meanwhile, Izuku and the others were listening to what All Might said, and they agreed with him. They all knew that Shigaraki's morals were a load of garbage, and that he really just liked violence, the same as all these other criminals. They were thankful for the pause in fighting as it allowed them to get some of their energy back as they were getting exhausted fighting Nomu and that Kirojiri guy. Now that All Might was with them, they were confident that things would go in their favor. We've got them outnumbered, Todoroki said seriously. Yeah, and Bakugo figured out that ghost guy's weakness. Izuku said as he got his shuriken ready. These dudes may act really tough, but with All Might's help we can take them down now. Let's do this, Kirishima declared as he readied his quirk. Don't attack. You students need to get out of here. I appreciate your assistance and bravery earlier, but this time will be different. Now just sit back and watch a pro at work. All Might said with his signature smile, but the boys didn't move an inch. I'm sorry, All Might, but we already tried leaving it to a pro once today, and now my dad is a bloody mess. Izuku said seriously as he stared at the villains with a glare, and All Might widened his eyes. That is true, and I did not even think about how young Aizawa must be feeling after seeing his father in a state like that. All Might said, angry at himself, but Todoroki spoke up. He's right, All Might. You need our help when it comes to this situation, even though you are the #1 hero. That bird guy is their key to defeating you, so just focus on him. We can handle the other two, Todoroki assured, and All Might was about to argue, but the Nomu came charging. That bird creature was coming at them in an incredible speed, and All Might used his own speed to meet the creature head-on. All Might barely saw the creature coming and was amazed at the speed it possessed. He doubted the thing was really human. It wasn't just the speed, though. The bird creature Shirogaki called Nomu was clearly very powerful. It was meeting All Might's blows, and they seemed to be evenly matched, something All Might could not believe. To make matters worse, it seemed that it was true. Nomu had a shock absorption quirk. None of the damage All Might was doing to him seemed to have a lasting effect. All Might finally understood what his students were saying when they said he should focus on Nomu and they should take the other two. He immediately shot that down as he was a hero and a teacher, meaning it was his job to protect them. But he knew that dealing with Nomu was going to take most of his strength, and the boys already fought them anyway. This thing is really tough. It doesn't seem to matter where I punch it. All right, students, I don't like it, but this is going to take most of my attention. Handle the other two while we wait for reinforcements, and as soon as they get here, you all fall back. Understand? All Might asked in a commanding voice, and the four nodded. Understood, sir, Kirishima said with passion. All right, let's take out the trash once and for all. Izuku said as they charged to Shigaraki and Kirojiri while All Might battled Nomu. TCH, I'm going to show you kids what happens when you get in my way. Let's go, Kirojiri, Shigaraki said as they were ready to kill the brats who messed their plan. On the road to the USJ, Namuri and the other teachers were heading to the USJ as fast as they could along with Class 1A Representative Tenya Ida. The boy had come into the faculty office frantic and told all the teachers in the room that the USJ had been invaded by villains. All of the teachers were shocked at that and thought it had to be a joke because the alarms didn't go off. That is when Ida told them that the villains had a member who could block the frequency, so he and his classmates could not communicate to the outside world while in the USJ. Midnight had widened her eyes as the boy told them that, and immediately reached for her phone and tried calling Shota. He didn't pick up. In fact, it didn't even ring, it just went straight to voicemail, and the same thing had happened when she tried to call Izuku. After her failed attempts, Present Mike then asked Ida who was taking care of the villains, and he told them that Shota was, but it wasn't looking good for him in 13. Then he told them that one of the villains warped his classmates to all ends of the USJ, and he didn't know what was going on. That was the final straw as Namuri and the other teachers grabbed their gear and followed Ida to the USJ. Namuri was following the others with fire in her eyes, angry at herself for just being on her computer while the two men in her life were fighting for their lives. She swore that if any one of those criminals had put her husband or her child in pain, that they would not live to regret it. In the midst of her fury, she did not notice her friend Present Mike place a hand on her shoulder. "We're going to make it in time, Namuri. Don't get so angry that you lose yourself," Mike said in a surprisingly serious voice. "I know, Hisashi, I know that I can't get angry and go on a rampage, because that would only make things worse, and I need to cool my head. I know that Shota is a pro hero, just like me, and I know that Izuku is incredibly skilled, but still, with all those villains that the Ida boy said there were, I can't help but be worried about my family. I wish that I had noticed something was wrong sooner. And yet while my husband and child have been fighting for their lives, I was just checking emails," Namuri said bitterly as she was angry at herself. "I know how you feel, but unfortunately we can't turn back the clock. They will be fine. We both know that Shota has more than a few tricks up his sleeve besides that sleeping bag of his. And Izuku has the best qualities and skills from the both of you. Those villains don't stand a chance," Mike said as he tried to cheer his friend up, but even he was worried about his best friend and his godson. "I hope you're right, let's hurry," Namuri said, and her co-workers along with Ida nodded. To think that Namuri had spoken with Shota about her worries concerning the break-in at UA, and if Izuku would truly be safe there the previous night. Shota had calmed her down and told her that UA was the safest place for Izuku to be because he would learn how to be a hero and they would be there to protect him. How insane it was that all of that was torn to pieces after not even 24 hours, and here she was running to her husband and child to protect them. "Shota, Izuku, hold on for a little while longer. Mama is coming," Namuri thought in her with conviction as she and her co-workers were approaching the USJ. Back at the USJ, the battle between All Might and Nomu was not letting up, and All Might was getting frustrated at the outcome of his battle. He would soon be out of time, and then there would be no one who could stop this creature. But what could he do? Nomu was absorbing all of his blows and regenerating whenever All Might landed a major blow on him. All Might would have to use even more of his power, but that would also cut the time down on his quirk. What could he do? Cutting to the battle between the 4 students of UA and the 2 main villains of the League of Villains, that was going more one-sided. Izuku and Todoroki were working together and fighting Shigaraki, while Bakugo and Kirishima were fighting Kirojiri, seeing as though Bakugo had figured out his weakness. The Warp Gate villain had made it harder to find his weak spot, but thanks to Bakugo's quirk and Kirishima's toughness, they found a way. Meanwhile, Shigaraki was becoming even more annoyed at these kids, and he could tell that Kirojiri was feeling the same way. He hated that the blonde brat had exposed Kirojiri's weakness and was using it to his advantage. He himself was having a tough time with the brat with the fire and ice, not to mention the brat dressed in all black. Maneuvering that fire and ice was already a pain, but he also had to deal with shuriken and chains. Shigaraki's quirk was decay, and it allowed him to break down anything, whether it be organic or not. He should have been able to perform his quirk on these brats no problem, but there was one problem. The kid with fire and ice was keeping his distance and was using his quirk as some sort of barrier. The kid with the chains and knives attacked too quickly for Shigaraki to react, and when he could, the boy had gotten a safe distance. He was doing it now when he suddenly wrapped his chains around Shigaraki, who found that he could not disintegrate the chains and was about to get hit until he called out to Nomu. "A little help, Nomu," Shigaraki yelled, and suddenly the bird creature was right in front of Izuku. "OCRP," Izuku yelled as he tried to nullify one of Nomu's quirks, but it didn't work and Nomu punched him in the face. Izuku tried to brace for impact, but it didn't matter as Nomu hit him so hard that he slid on the concrete. His right hand was in a lot of pain, but somehow he was able to struggle and get up. The Nomu was about to charge at him again, but luckily All Might was there to intercept him this time. Bakugo and Todoroki were still fighting Shigaraki and Kurogiri, but Kirishima raced to Izuku to make sure that he was all right after that hit he took. "Holy CRP Aizawa, are you okay?" Kirishima asked with wide eyes. "I want to say yes, but I'm not. I think I may have broken my hand." Izuku grimaced as it hurt to move his right hand. "Yeah, that does look bad. Hopefully All Might could take care of that bird guy quick, and then turn his attention to the other two. I will make you pay for harming my student." All Might roared as he started punching Nomu, but Shigaraki just laughed. "Huh, don't you ever learn, All Might? It doesn't matter how hard you hit Nomu. His shock absorption quirk lets him take all those punches like they are nothing." Shigaraki said maniacally, but All Might scoffed. "I am well aware, but I am not out of tricks," All Might declared with his signature smile. Everyone wondered what he was talking about until they all widened their eyes at what the number one hero started doing. He hit Nomu harder, and when the monster was spun away by his punches, All Might raced to meet him and started punching again. All Might was tossing the bird monster around like a rag doll, punching and throwing it into the ground and in the sides of the stadium. He took to the air and then slammed him on the ground, meeting him nearly the same time as Nomu landed. Now, for a lesson, students. You may have heard these words before, but I will show you what they really mean. Go beyond plus ultra, All Might screamed as he slammed his fist right into Nomu's stomach. What resulted in that devastating punch from All Might was Nomu flying into the side of the USJ, but the creature did not just crash into the wall and fall down. What actually happened was that the force from All Might was so strong that Nomu literally flew out of the building. Everyone who was watching the battle could not believe that this was really reality. How was it possible that a creature who had given them hell had been thrown out of the building by one person? The students that were with Shota and 13 were amazed and relieved by what just happened. They knew that All Might could handle the villains, but none of them expected him to literally punch one straight out of the gigantic USJ. They were relieved that the brain monster was defeated because it was clearly the one these other villains relied on the most. Mineta was in tears as he called All Might the greatest hero ever, and his classmates agreed. "Holy Mother of God," Izuku said with wide eyes, and his 3 classmates shared the same look. That was like the finishing move in a video game. He beat the shock absorption right out of him. "I've never seen brute strength like that," Kirishima said, amazed. To have power like that, he must have been punching that monster so fast that he couldn't regenerate. Bakugo said, shocked. "He really is the best," Todoroki thought in amazement. The victory was well earned and hard fought as it took more than 300 blows, but it ended in that monster's defeat. "You have been bested, villains. Surrender. We all want to get this over with quickly," All Might said to the villains, and Shigaraki was shaking. "He cheated. He's not any weaker at all," Shigaraki said angrily. "Weaker?" Izuku thought, as he apparently was the only one who heard Shigaraki in his quiet voice. "What's wrong? Are you not going to attack me? I thought you said that I would be dead by the end of this." "Well, here I am. Come and get me," All Might said threateningly, and Shigaraki stepped back in fear. "Man, this is intense," Bakugo said in a nervous tone. It seems that the bird monster really was their only hope of beating All Might. Look how scared the hand guy is now. Interesting seeing how he was talking so tough before," Izuku said as he glared at the villain. "Yes, it is just as I expected. There is no reason for us to fight anymore. He will handle this." Todoroki said as they nodded. Come on, Aizawa. We should get out of here and go back to the others. The last thing we need is to be taken hostage or get in All Might's way. Kirishima said, and Izuku nodded. Yes, that makes the most sense, but you have got to be kidding me. Izuku said angrily, and the other three looked to where was looking, and their eyes widened. The villains that they had taken down before this fight had apparently started coming to, and were getting back up. Now, after having that battle with the bird monster and dealing with those other two villains, they apparently had to do the first fiasco all over again. Luckily, All Might was here, so they didn't have to worry about the other two villains. Izuku may have had a broken hand, but he felt he could beat these wannabe villains with one hand anyway. Great, we have to deal with these losers again? Bakugo asked angrily. It seems that way. Demon, we must have been dealing with those other three longer than I thought. OCRP. If these guys are up, then the ones by Yairozu and Gyro are too. I left them over there in the mountain zone with the villains we beat. Izuku said seriously. They can handle themselves, and All Might can handle the other two main villains. Meanwhile, we just have to make sure that these guys don't cause any more trouble. Kirishima said as he readied his hardening quirk. Will you be joining us, Aizawa? We saw that bird monster did to you. Todoroki said a bit concerned, but Izuku just waved him off. Don't worry, I still have one hand that works and an erasing quirk. Let's do this. Izuku said with confidence as he readied shuriken in his left hand. The boys were about to take on the reawakened villains, but as Izuku looked to his left, he saw something that was odd. The villain with the hands was going crazy and scratching his neck, and he appeared to be talking about ending the final boss right in front of him. Izuku thought there was no way Shigaraki was stupid enough to go after All Might, but that thought was squashed as he and the other villain went after him. It was at that moment Izuku decided to get some payback. Hey, hand guy, this is for what your DMN pet did to my arm. Izuku declared as he activated his quirk, which stopped Kirojiri and then threw shuriken with his left arm. The shuriken did indeed hit both Shigaraki and Kirojiri, and the electric shockwave they transmitted stunned the two villains for a short bit. All Might was secretly glad at what young Aizawa did because he had reached the time limit on his quirk, and if he committed any actions, then his true form might be revealed. Unfortunately, the shock from Izuku's shuriken did not last very long, and Shigaraki was up and running again along with Kirojiri. It was at this time that everyone heard the sound of a gun going off, and the next thing anyone knew, there was a bullet in Shigaraki's hand. Not just him, but a bunch of the other villains that he brought had bullets in them, and they were on the ground. Clearly a villain did not make that happen. So who did? God forbid another group of villains decided to crash the party and give them all more problems to deal with. What the CRP just happened? Kyoka asked Momo as they were in the mountain zone. Is it them? Momo asked, hoping to see the teachers. They are here. All Might thought in happiness, and then a voice broke him out of his thoughts. Sorry, everyone. I know that we are a bit late, but I got the teachers here as fast as I could. Principal Nizu said as he and the other teachers came into view. It's Ida. Ochaco cried in happiness. Your class rep has returned, and I brought reinforcements. Tenya yelled in his dramatic tone, and everyone was happy to see him. Oh, thank God. Izuku said as he let out a sigh of relief. Our priority is to protect our students. Nizu commanded, and they all nodded. Yes, sir, the teachers said in understanding, and Namiri's eyes widened when she saw her husband being carried by one of the students. Oh my God, Shota! Shota, baby, can you hear me? What happened to him? Into 13, Namiri asked, terrified as she saw her husband's bloody face and being unconscious. It was that bird creature and the ghost villain Miss Midnight. Mr. Aizawa and 13 did their best to protect us, but they were too strong and had too powerful quirks. Shoji told the woman, but the others had a single thought in their mind. Did she just call Mr. Aizawa baby? The students of Class 1A thought in shock. Oh, Shota, and what about my son? Where's Izuku, and why isn't he with you all? Midnight asked, and everyone's widened. You're Aizawa's mom? The students of Class 1A asked with shock written all over their faces, and if the circumstances were different, Namiri would have been amused. Yes, I am Izuku's mother, and Shota is my husband. Now can one of you please tell me where he is? Namiri asked calmly, not wanting to go off on the kids. I think he's still down there with Todoroki and the other two in the main area of the USJ. He told me to get Mr. Aizawa back here and that he, Todoroki, Bakugo, and Kirishima would try to hold off the main three villains as long as they could. I used my quirk to make Mr. Aizawa weightless, and I carried him here as fast as I could. Soon after that, All Might showed up, and he fought the bird creature while the boys fought the others. I think he is still down there with everyone else. Ochaco informed Namiri, who looked to the middle of the USJ and sighed with relief when she saw Izuku. Oh, thank God he's okay. Wait, why he's holding his arm like that? Namiri wondered with wide eyes, but focused on the situation. Students, thank you so much for protecting my husband in 13 and for staying so strong through this terror. We are all sorry we could not be here sooner. But we are here now, and this madness will come to an end. Midnight declared, and the rest of the teachers stepped with determined looks on their faces. The wannabe villains were nervous and scared at the other pros showing up, and they didn't know what to do, so they just started firing off their quirks. Present Mike just walked up to the front of the stairs and used his voice quirk to knock the projectiles back and give the villains some serious ear damage. Class 1, A's math teacher, the pro hero Ectoplasm, used his clone quirk to scour the battlefield and give damage to multiple enemies. The rest of the teachers went into the various zones of the USJ to help the other students that were trapped there and were facing villains themselves. The villains were trying to fight back against the teachers, but they were just outmatched in every way that mattered. At the end of the day, the villains were pretty much just street thugs, and they were going against opponents that had years of experience. Izuku and the others looked at Shigaraki and Kurogiri, and they could tell they were backing down. Oh, damn it, the pros are here. I guess it really is game over H. Shigaraki yelled in pain as he was shot. The pro hero and teacher snipe was using his homing quirk and his pistol to make the hand villain go down. Unfortunately, Kurogiri was able to block the bullets as his smoke encapsulated Shigaraki, basically acting as a barrier for him. Snipe kept shooting, but found that his bullets could not penetrate the black smoke, and told everyone that they needed someone who could capture him from a distance. That is when an injured 13 got up slowly and said that she would take care of it, and activated her quirk. Given this is Black Hole. Kurogiri yelled as he struggled to get out of the suction quirk, and Shigaraki glared at All Might. I may have failed to kill you this time, but your days are numbered. All Might, symbol of peace, I'm going to kill you. Shigaraki promised as he and Kurogiri disappeared. With the two main villains gone and Nomu being thrown out of the USJ, it was not long before the other villains were defeated and tied up by the teachers. What was supposed to be just a rescue exercise for the students turned into a matter of fighting to survive. Thankfully, it seemed to be over, and they could finally catch their breath, but no student was going to forget about this anytime soon. The question in a lot of their minds was if the villains were going to come back one day. If the teachers have gathered here then, that means that the rest of the school is safe and unharmed. The villains only attacked this facility and not the rest of the campus. Todoroki acknowledged and Izuku nodded. Yes, it seems like this nightmare is finally over. Thank goodness, too. I don't know how much more I could have fought with this broken hand of mine. Izuku admitted as he winced at his injury, but her voice. Aizawa. Momo and Kyoka both said as they ran to the boys. Oh, Yaoyorozu and Jiraiya, you guys are okay. Thank goodness, I was worried. Izuku said, letting out a sigh of relief. And the girls smiled, but Momo then widened her eyes. You're hurt, Momo said as she looked at her classmate's hand. Yeah, that bird guy got me pretty good, but don't worry, it's nothing recovery girl can't handle. I'm more worried about my dad in 13. Hey, speaking of which, All Might, are you okay? Izuku asked as he and his friends turned around and saw their teacher being encapsulated by a cement wall. What the heck is that? Kyoka asked, and the others thought it was another villain, but their worries went away when they heard a familiar voice. Don't worry, students. I'm just giving him some first aid. The pro hero and teacher Cementos said as the students sighed in relief. Oh, thank goodness. Momo said in relief, and then they all heard another familiar voice. Izuku, Midnight said as she came running to her son who smiled even though he was in pain. Hey, Mama. Izuku said as his mother wrapped her arms around him and held him close, and his friends backed away, giving them some room. But their eyes were wide as fish. Midnight is his mom. The 5 classmates thought in shock as they could see the similarities. "Oh, Aizawa, baby, are you hurt at all? I saw you grabbing your arm earlier. What happened?" Namiri asked as she calmed down a bit after hugging her son. "Yeah, unfortunately, I think my hand might be broken, but that is nothing that recovery girl can't handle. He's gone now, but that bird monster that was here earlier intercepted my attack on the hand guy and punched me into the wall. I think my hand was the first part of me to get hit on impact. I think Dad got it worse than me, though," Izuku said as he shuddered, remembering how his dad looked before he got to him. "Yes, I saw. That Uraraka girl told me what happened, and I wish I could have been here sooner. The ambulance should be here any moment to grab your dad in 13. She was beaten up pretty badly as well. We should go join them and have the doctors check you out to make sure you don't need anything else besides Recovery Girl's quirk. Students, you should go to the entrance and wait with the others. I'm glad you are okay. Let's go, Aizu," Namiri said as she began to lead Izuku to the emergency exit. Izuku gave his friend a smile as he left, and gave a particular smile to Momo, who smiled back. Izuku and his mom went through the emergency exit and found the ambulance loading Shota and 13 on it. Namiri explained that she was Shota's wife and that their son was also injured, so the medics allowed them to ride in the ambulance. Namiri and Izuku looked at Shota with worry in their eyes, but knew that he would pull through because he was strong. Meanwhile, the police showed up outside the USJ and started cuffing all of the wannabe villains Shigaraki had brought with them. The police honestly wondered if they had brought enough transports. There seemed to be more than 50 villains. They all made sure to get the kids out of the USJ before they got to the villains, considering that their safety was the biggest priority. As the villains were being loaded into the vehicles, the main officer Tsukachi was counting off the students. 16, 17, 18, 19. Everyone seems to be okay besides Eraserhead and Midnight's son. Let's get these students back to the main campus. They have been through a lot, so we probably should not question them right away, Tsukachi told another officer, but Sue came forward. "Excuse me, detective, but what about Mr. Aizawa?" Sue asked, and her classmates wanted to know too and heard the detective's phone. "Oh, speak of the devil. That is the doctor right now. Hold on, I'll put it on speakerphone. Go ahead," Tsukachi told the doctor. "The bones in Aizawa's arms are splintered, and he is facial fracturing. Fortunately, there doesn't seem to be any serious brain damage. However, his orbital flow has almost been completely destroyed. We have no way of knowing if his eyesight will be impaired once he is healed up. As for his son Izuku, the only damage he has is in his hand, as it has multiple fractures. We will know more about his recovery time when Recovery Girl shows up," the doctor informed them before hanging up. "There you have it," Tsukachi said, and the students looked sad. Not his eyes. Moneta said, scared for his teacher. Sir, what about 13? Mina asked the detective. "There's no need to worry about her. Despite some bad lacerations to the back, 13 will pull through as good as new. Not only that, but All Might is going to be just fine as well. He is in the nurse's office right now. Recovery Girl's power is all the treatment that he needs," Tsukachi informed them, and they all sighed in relief. "Thank goodness," Ochaco said in relief. "Now, let's get you back to class," Tsukachi said, and they all nodded. "Okay," they all said as they followed one of the officers. Meanwhile, inside of the USJ, Principal Nizu, President Mike, as well as Snipe were taking a good look at their facility and what had gone wrong. A place that was designed to practice rescuing people had turned into a war zone by invading villains. To make matters worse, it seemed that they had no trouble getting into the USJ and could easily intercept the alarms and communication systems. Clearly an upgrade was needed so that this could never happen again. "We are going to need security improvements, perhaps an entire system overhaul," Principal Nizu said. "Agreed," Snipe said, nodding in agreement. "Man, I have heard of war quirks before, but they are incredibly rare, and they could easily change the course of a battle. It's scary to think that one of those main villains has one. Clearly from what the kids say, those other main two had incredible quirks as well. What they did to Shota, it was terrifying to see." Present Mike said in a worried tone that was the opposite of his usual one. I agree. Speaking of which, how is Namiri? Snipe asked worriedly in Mike's side. She's trying to hold it together. Thankfully, Izuku is not that injured and is comforting her, but I should still go and see them. It's going to be hard for her to get those images of an injured Shota out of her mind. They have been together since our 3rd year here at UA, and today was the worst she has seen him hurt. Mike told them, and they all nodded. I think the students may need a day to recuperate from what happened today, but I think this experience has filled a fire in them. They know now what you can face against if you are a pro, and that you need to be fully prepared for when that day comes. Nizu said with conviction, and the other two nodded. Today had been a nightmare for sure, but for pro heroes this day could come at any given time. It was incredibly unfortunate that the students had to go through it, especially since they were only in their 1st year, but this was the life of a pro hero. This was the reason why hero schools like UA were so important, because they prepared kids who wanted to be a hero for the hero life. The students of Class 1A would never forget this day, though, and would continue to learn from it. The Aizawa family was currently in a medical room in the local hospital, still reeling from what happened today. Namiri had calmed down a bit, but she was still shaken from seeing Shota all bloody and broken like that. Recovery Girl had come down to the hospital and treated both Shota and Izuku, giving them extra healing than the doctors could. She said that Izuku could come to her in a couple days and his hand would be as good as new, but Shota was a different story. Recovery Girl told Shota that his body would make a full recovery, but she wasn't sure if he would ever see as far as he used to with the damage his eyes took. Shota said he could live with that, and Namiri was sad, but she felt it could have been a lot worse, so she was at peace with it. Recovery Girl then said that she could heal Shota, but it would take a bit more time, and he would need rest. Namiri figured she would have to take care of Shota when he was here and when they got to go home. Thankfully, Izuku could help out. Speaking of Izuku, Namiri was glad that his injuries were not that serious and that he would be good to go in a matter of days. She was proud of her son and those other 3 boys for fighting against the villains and managing to keep them back, though she was also ashamed that her son had to fight the villains while she was just checking emails. Both Izuku and Shota told her not to worry about it, and that it wasn't her fault, but it was hard to agree when the 2 men in her life were in the hospital and she was fine. Izuku was currently in another room, giving Detective Tsukachi the rundown of what exactly happened today at the USJ. The detective figured that Izuku would be one of the best people to give details, considering he fought the villain presumed to be the leader of the group. Izuku told both his parents that he didn't know how they survived for that long, especially against that bird monster. While Namiri didn't see it, she was sure whatever this bird monster was had to be strong to injure Shota, as bad as it did, and to stand against All Might. Recovery Girl had finished the treatment for Shota, who was lying in his bed and covered in bandages. If the situation was different, then Namiri was positive that she would be laughing because her husband looked like a mummy. Unfortunately, this was not a laughing matter, and though Shota would heal, it still hurt her heart to see him like that. Luckily, he was going to recover thanks to Recovery Girl, and 13 would make a full recovery too. So, Recovery Girl, how exactly can I take care of Shota when we get home? Namiri asked the old woman, but a voice interrupted her. Namiri, you don't need to do anything, I will be fine. Shota muffled, and Namiri just rolled her eyes at her husband. Did you say something, honey? For some reason I can't hear you. Oh wait, it's because you're covered in bandages. Namiri said in annoyance and heard her husband groan. Troublesome woman, Shota muttered, and he couldn't see from his angle, but his wife was sticking her tongue out at him, and Recovery Girl looked amused. Well, if you two are done with your marital banter, then I will tell you that I may have gone a little overboard with the bandages. A few more of my healing sessions will fix Shota right up, but until then he will need help from you and the boy. I will email you a good take-care plan that I created when I get back to my office. In the meantime, Shota, you will be able to move around a bit, but do not overdo it. Is that clear? Recovery Girl said in a deadly tone that honestly freaked Shota out, but he didn't let it show. I understand, damn it, Shota said with an annoyed groan, but Namiri smirked knowing that her husband was scared. Good, now I will see you both tomorrow along with Izuku. Until then, just enjoy some family time and don't do anything crazy. Recovery Girl instructed as she healed Shota once more and then left. Namiri expressed her gratitude to Recovery Girl for healing her husband and her son. Then she walked to her husband and hugged him and nuzzled the top of his head. Shota could move his hands again and was rubbing the back of his wife's hair in comfort. He didn't see how distraught she was when she saw him all broken and bloody. He hated that Namiri had to see him in such bad shape. It was definitely the first time she saw him like that. They had been together since their second year at UA, and Shota had always been careful to make sure he and Namiri were okay. This was the first time that Namiri had seen Shota hurt badly, and it made him sick to see her worried and sad. He was glad that his son wasn't in much pain, and he was very proud of Izuku for coming to his rescue and fending off those villains. Shota felt foolish for sending Izuku and his classmates away from the fight. It clearly worked out horribly. He severely underestimated the head villain who brought the others together. Shota just thought he was like the rest. It was true that the other villains were amateurs at best, and Shota had no problem with them. But the main three were a different story. Especially that Diamond Bird who threw him around like a rag doll. Shota was glad that All Might apparently knocked that bird into the sky. If the number one hero had not showed him, Shota believed that the outcome would be much worse. Just then his wife's voice broke him from his thoughts. "Don't blame yourself, honey," Namiri said sweetly as she stroked her husband's head. "It's pretty hard not to. I am supposed to be a pro hero, and yet I was tossed around like a rag doll. To make matters worse, I had to be protected by my son and his classmates who are all in their first year. I suppose I should just be glad that the students are safe, but I can't help but feel ashamed, Namiri," Shota said honestly as his wife kissed his head. "Shota, there's no way that you or anyone else could have predicted what happened or how strong those three main villains were. You made the right decision in sending Izuku and the students away, seeing as though they are just first years. Things just went sideways like they often do, and everyone fought to keep the villains back and defeated. If anyone is to blame, it's me and the others. We didn't notice anything was wrong, and while you and Izuku were fighting for your lives, I was just checking emails," Namiri said bitterly. "Don't you start. Someone hacked the communications from a USJ. There is no way that any of you could have known," Shota said, consoling his wife, who was nuzzling him. "I guess so. Why don't we just be happy that the students are safe, and our son is going to make a quick and full recovery?" Namiri suggested, and her husband nuzzled her neck. "Sounds good. Speaking of which, where's our young hero?" Shota asked Namiri. "He is in another room speaking with Detective Tsukachi about what happened today. He asked if he could talk with Izuku, considering that he was one of the 4 boys who fought the main villains. The detective wants to make sure he has every detail, but he should be finishing up soon." Namiri told Shota, and he sighed. "How'd he seem? He wasn't too freaked out, was he?" Shota asked with worry. "If I am being honest, I think he was pretty scared to see you like that, but with the fight ahead of him, he probably pushed it down. With all that has happened, I don't think he really had time to reflect on what happened to you, and hopefully seeing you in good spirits will make him not think of it at all. Plus, I know he will just want to know about your condition and how to help. Izuku doesn't really focus on the past," Namiri said with a smile, and she couldn't see it, but Shota smiled back. "Then the only thing to look forward to is the future," Shota said as Namiri rested her head on his in comfort and bliss. Interrogation room. As if today wasn't hectic enough, Izuku found himself in a separate room in the hospital where he was telling a detective everything that happened today. The detective said he mostly wanted to hear about the 3 main villains because all of the others were just amateurs and not really that important. Izuku told him that he would be glad to help, and he was calm knowing that his father and 13 were getting treatment as they speak. To be honest, Izuku was still a bit freaked out seeing his dad all bloody and seeing 13 smashed to a pulp, but he knew he couldn't focus on that right now. What mattered was finding those other 2 villains and figuring out just who they were. Izuku didn't want to think about if they came back, and maybe with stronger villains than the losers they first showed up with. What really confused Izuku was why did they want to kill All Might so bad? And also, why do it at UA? It was confusing, but Detective Tsukachi's voice brought him out of his thoughts. "Thanks for taking the time to meet with me, Izuku. I know that you have been through a lot today. I just want to hear what happened from your view today, so we can go through all the evidence efficiently. So just tell me what happened from the start. Sukachi said, and Izuku nodded. Of course, sir. The whole thing started when my class and I got inside of the USJ in 13 was about to begin a training. I saw some kind of dark circle in the middle of arena, and I asked my dad if it was a part of the training. He widened his eyes and told 13 to protect us students. Next thing I knew, there was an army of villains coming out of that portal. I tried to call my mom, but the signal was blocked and the alarms weren't going off. One of those villains had to be responsible for it. Izuku informed the detective, who nodded. I see. That must have been part of their plan, and clearly it worked since the other teachers apparently had no idea this was going on. Please continue. Sukachi said, and Izuku nodded. After that, my dad told 13 to get me and the other students out of there while he handled the villains. I told him that he should have at least kept a couple of us with him to fight the villains, but he said no and that it was his job to protect us. He did a good job at first. None of the villains could hit him because of his maneuvers. The rest of us, along with 13, nearly got to the exit, but that warp gate guy blocked our path. I think he was called Kirojiri. Izuku said, not exactly sure, but Sukachi wrote it down anyway. Kirojiri, huh? I have never heard that name or seen that guy before, but he definitely has a powerful quirk. So, what exactly did Kirojiri do? The detective asked, and Izuku responded. Well, he taunted us at first, and then was preparing his quirk. I was about to nullify it, but Bakugo and Kirishima jumped in the way, blocking my vision. I wasn't able to use my quirk, and that warp guy used his to spread us out all through the USJ. Ida got out of the way, and I think the others who made it out voted that he leave the USJ and go get the teachers. That warp gate guy spread us out, but it was clear that he just wanted us to be separated. He didn't do it strategically at all. For example, he put Sue in the area with water, even though she has a frog quirk. Izuku told the detective, who nodded. I see. So their plan really was just to kill All Might. They didn't care about you students at all, just so long as you were out of the way and could be picked off when in smaller numbers. If this Kirojiri villain had put you and your friends in areas that gave you disadvantages, then today definitely would have ended up differently. So, what happened after he separated you all? Sukachi asked Izuku, who sighed. Well, Irozu, and Jiru were stuck in a mountain area and were soon surrounded by villains. It was okay, though. They were all amateurs, and we took care of them rather easily. After they were defeated, I heard a scream that I knew belonged to my father, so I told Yairozu and Jiru to tie those villains up while I went to investigate. That's when I saw that bird creature beating the CRP out of my dad, and it was doing it on the command of that hand guy. I got enraged and wrapped my chain around him and threw him into the pillar. Luckily, some backup came in the form of Todoroki, Uraraka, Bakugo, and Kirishima. Uraraka used her zero-gravity quirk on my dad to carry him to the entrance while me and the guys held off the main three villains. We were doing a good job at first, but that demon bird creature made it so hard for us. Fighting the other two wasn't as hard because they only had one quirk, and Bakugo figured out Kirojiri's weakness. His real body is there under the smoke. You just have to find it, and Bakugo did. Nomu somehow had multiple quirks, making our attacks useless. It was looking bad, but then All Might showed up. Izuku said with a sigh of relief, even though the event had already happened. Man, you and those other three boys must be tough as nails to take on those villains and hold your own for a bit. The Hero Society is in good hands. So did All Might take care of those three while you four ran to the entrance to join your classmates? Sukachi asked, but Izuku shook his head. Nah, that's what All Might wanted us to do, but we convinced him to let us fight that hand guy and Kirojiri while he took care of the bird guy. It's a good thing he agreed to, because fighting that thing took all of his attention, and the other two weren't so tough for us to handle. I was about to knock out the hand guy before that bird showed up out of nowhere and knocked me into a wall, causing my injury. Luckily, that's when All Might punched the bird so fast he didn't have time to regenerate and swung him out of the USJ. Once that bird thing was out of the picture, the demeanor of the other two main villains changed completely. Both of them showed that the key to their plan really was the bird guy, as they acted scared of All Might when it was just the two of them. Then the hand guy started to throw a tantrum and said some really weird things, like how All Might wasn't weaker or something stupid like that. Guy must have been really crazy. Izuku said with a chuckle, and he didn't see Tsukachi's eyes widen. It cannot be. Does that villain know about All Might's condition? The detective thought worriedly, but put to the side for now. Well, whoever that villain is must surely be deranged if he thought All Might was getting weaker or could be taken down so easily. It is unfortunate that they got away, but at least everyone is safe for now, and I don't believe they will be attacking UA anytime soon. Thank you for this information, Izuku. This will really help the investigation move forward in a swift way. Those three main villains aren't in our database, but thanks to your testimony, I think that will change soon. Tsukachi said gratefully. No problem. You need anything else? Izuku asked, but the detective shook his head. No, that should be all. Go be with your parents, kid. The detective said with a smile. Thanks, Detective Tsukachi. Izuku said with a bow as he left the room and went back to his dad's hospital room. Izuku exhaled as he reminisced on what happened earlier today. It was still a shock that he and his friends made it out of the USJ alive. They were only at UA for a couple of weeks. Surely they were not ready to take on villains yet, but they surprised themselves. Izuku was happy that the friends he had made were strong and could use their quirks to the best of their abilities. He didn't know if he was friends with Todoroki, and he definitely knew he wasn't friends with Bakugo, but Momo and Kirishima kicked butt. Speaking of Momo, he saw that he had about a dozen text messages from her asking if he was okay and if his dad was all right. Then he got a few angry messages from her asking why he wasn't texting her back and to stop ignoring her. Izuku laughed and messaged her back, saying it was hard to text with his non-Diamante hand. He then received an apologetic message saying that she was sorry and that she hadn't thought of that, to which Izuku laughed again and told her not to worry. Izuku told Momo that he was fine and his hand should be fully healed in the coming days, and that his father needed some work, but he would be fine soon enough. Momo replied that she was so glad to hear that she was really worried about him and his dad. Izuku felt it was nice that she was worried about him, but he was also worried about her and asked how she was doing after the chaos after today. Luckily, she texted him back saying that she was fine, but she was still a little scared from what happened today. Izuku couldn't blame her at all. Students in their first year like them usually didn't see much action against villains for a while. They, however, did it in their first week of classes, really showing them what hero life can be about when it comes to villains. Usually, they would have a bit of experience before learning that, but he guessed that Class 1A would have a different experience than other hero school classes. He told Momo that he did not know when he or his dad would be back for classes, but told her not to worry about them. He then told her that in case he is gone for a couple days, to please lend him her notes, because she was the smartest in the class. She responded by telling him that she would, of course, lend him her notes, and sent the winking emoji. Izuku instantly tried to get rid of the blush that appeared on his face so that his parents wouldn't see it. Izuku wondered when he was going to ask Momo out, probably after the UA Sports Festival, so that they would be in a relaxed mode and not stressed. He was really feeling her, and he could tell she was feeling some type of way for him. Izuku just hoped that he didn't screw it up whenever he asked her out, considering he didn't date anyone in middle school. He was sure that Momo would probably say yes, but he was still optimistic. Izuku finally got to his dad's hospital room, and he didn't whether to laugh or to be sad at what he saw. His father looked like a mummy as he was wrapped in bandages and seemed to be pouting like a child as his wife was trying to feed him. He kept denying her and telling her that he could feed himself even though his hands were bandaged. Namiri kept being persistent and fed him through his bandages whether he liked it or not. Izuku thought about getting all of this on video, but knew that his dad would ground him, or at least would try. Hey, Mom and Dad, I'm back. What's going on? Izuku asked, trying to keep the laughter out of his voice. Oh, hello, my Izu, I am. Try to feed your injured father, but he keeps being a stubborn child through these bandages. Namiri said, annoyed, and Izuku laughed while his father growled. I told you that I do not need you to feed me. Shota whined, but his son just laughed. Dad, you can barely move your arms. Swallow your pride and let Mom feed you. We both know that I can't do it because of my hand, and you gotta eat so you can heal faster, so just do it. Izuku commanded and Namiri nodded. See? Even your son knows that you need to rest and let your body heal, so stop complaining and open up. Namiri instructed as Shota reluctantly opened up his mouth. Namuri fed Shota his dinner, while Izuku ate his own Ochaco, seeing as though he still had use of his diamante hand. It was great, because Izuku had not had anything since lunch before the USJ attack took place, and he was starving. He loved anything that had meat in it. It filled him up faster than vegetables, but he knew those were just as important. Admittedly, Izuku preferred lunch rushes and his mom's cooking to fast food restaurants, but after the day he was not complaining. After he was done eating, Izuku went over to his dad, lying in the hospital bed, and hugged him. Shota could move his arms a bit, but didn't need to, as he just accepted the nuzzling that his son was giving him. Izuku was just glad that his dad was okay. It was incredibly unnerving to see him down on the ground and all bloody from that bird creature. It made Izuku more determined to get stronger so he could better protect his dad if something like that happened again. Little did Izuku know that his father was also going to use today as motivation to get stronger and improve his skills. Shota was a professional hero just like Namuri, but today proved to him that the title is not enough and he must never stop improving. It made him feel ashamed that his son and a few of his students had to fight the villains while he was lying on the ground unconscious. It was supposed to be the other way around. He was supposed to be protecting them. Shota swore that the next time something like this happened, it would be. Namuri went over to her son and hugged him from behind and began to slide his head smoothly. She hated that her baby boy had to go through something like that in the first week of learning how to be a hero. And now here he was comforting his father who had been injured in the battle earlier that day. If her reaction to seeing Shota state earlier was bad, then she wondered how their son took it. He probably put it in the back of his mind, considering he was in the middle of a battle. But now that the battle was over. "So, Dad, how are you feeling?" Izuku could not help but ask. "Better than I felt earlier today, that's for sure. Something about having a giant bird on me is very uncomfortable. By the way, thank you for your bravery, son. Looking back on it, I should have kept a few of you with me. If I did, then maybe All Might, and the others would have gotten there sooner." Shota admitted, but Izuku shook his head. "Don't even think about it. What's done is done, and I'm just glad I got to you when I did. I am even more glad that Uraraka was around. It's thanks to her that you got out of there safely. She used her zero-gravity quirk on you to make you weightless, and she carried you to the entrance." Izuku informed his father, who nodded. "I see. I will have to thank her for helping me. Clearly it turned the tide of the battle." Shota praised. "The only question that I have is, who exactly were those people? Did they really just want to kill All Might, or did they want something else? I wonder if they're going to come back." Izuku said as he shuddered at the thought, but was interrupted by his mother's voice. "Detective Takachi will be holding a meeting tonight at UA with the teachers to fully go over that exact topic. He aims to share the information he gathers today with the pro heroes, so in case they do come back for whatever reason, we will be ready. While this Tamura Shigaraki did pretty much lose his army today, it is unknown whether he has other villains that are following him. I doubt he would use the same tactic of attacking the USJ, but UA may not be off his radar." Namuri said honestly, and Izuku nodded. "I see. Will you be attending that meeting, Mom?" Izuku asked, and his mother shook her head. "No. I told your Uncle Mike to kindly cover for me and let us know the details once the meeting is over. After what happened today, I need to be with the two men in my life, especially now that my husband has become a mummy." Namuri said in a joking manner, but Shota just grumbled. "I'm not a mummy." Shota yelled in a muffled tone, causing his wife and son to laugh uncontrollably. "Yes, dear, we love you too." Namuri laughed as Shota just grumbled again. It really showed the close bond that the Aizawa family had, given they could laugh together after a horrific event took place just a few hours ago. The Aizawa family really went through their first major tribulation with that villain attack, and should have rocked their world, but they still came together. It really let all of them know that as long as they had each other, then things would be okay, and nothing could tear them apart. Shota and Namuri hoped that the same could be said for Class 1A, and that hopefully the villain attack would not make any of them lose their way or their goals. Every single student in Class 1A had the potential to become a great hero, but they got a taste today of what true hero life could very well be like. It could be scary, but the main goal of being a hero was to keep society safe from attacks like that, so they would experience it sooner or later. Shota knew that his students would not let this attack deter them. They seemed like the kind of group to use it as learning experience instead of a memory they wanted to be forgotten. He would have to offer counseling for those who were scarred by the attack and needed someone to talk to. It wasn't cowardly because they were all human. Shota found that he could move a bit without pain to his wife and son's delight. When he got the okay from the doctor, Namiri and Izuku helped Shota downstairs, and into their cars they went home, already looking towards the future. Meeting room, UA. The teachers of the hero course at UA High were all gathered in the conference room, joined by their principal and Detective Tsukachi from the police force. All of the teachers were still reeling from what happened earlier today and were doing their best to focus on the task at hand. A small army of villains had attacked the USJ, and the students had to fight for their lives, while they, the pro heroes, were just relaxing in the teacher's lounge. It made all of them angry, especially Present Mike, after he saw what happened to Shota and Izuku. All of the teachers wanted to find those two main villains and bring them to justice. For them, it would be retribution. All Might was healed by Recovery Girl, but he was still angry by what happened today. He knew that he made a ton of enemies by being the symbol of peace, and he knew that a lot of new villains would want to take him out. He never imagined that these villains would use children as a way to draw him out, though. That made his BLD boil. He was proud of those 4 boys for holding their own against those 2 main villains while he handled the bird creature, but it never should have got to that point. Though he was losing strength, All Might swore that he would never allow such an event to happen again. Just then the detective started to speak. Our investigators are doing everything they can about this so-called League of Villains. We have made some progress, and the talk I had with Izuku Aizawa helped clarify some things. Unfortunately, we can't find anything on this Shigaraki person so far. We searched our records for men in their 20s to 30s who are registered as having some sort of decaying quirk, but we have come up empty. The same is to be said for that Warp Gate villain called Kirojiri, which means either they aren't citizens or they're using aliases, hard to find either way. Tsukachi informed them. So basically, what you're saying is that we don't know anything. Vlad King surmised in an irritated tone. We have to track them down. I shot their ringleader, but once he heals up, he will probably try to pull another stunt like this again. This is a real pain. Snipe said, annoyed. Yeah, he certainly did seem like the type. All Might said as he put his thumb on his chin. Is something on your mind, All Might? Principal Nizu asked curiously. The attack on the USJ was way too bold. No sane adult would ever try to do something like that. Not to mention that the ringleader kept monologuing about the reasons why he was there and kept bragging about Noma's many quirks, but he never spoke about his own powers. He must not be all that skilled either, considering that the boys held their own against him. When things didn't go his way, he was also visibly upset, like he was going to throw a tantrum. Then again, his bragging about Noma's quirks was a quick way to draw me into a fight. All Might admitted, but then. Nizu spoke up. That may be true, yes, but strategically it was foolish to reveal Noma's quirks up front instead of keeping them a secret. Nizu said, and Tsukachi nodded his head. Shigaraki made wild and immature claims, but he did so while keeping an entirely straight face and talked about Noma like he was some sort of pet. Not only that, but it seemed like he had never been told no before, like he thought things would go his way no matter what. He has the personality of a spoiled little brat, a man-child. I can easily say that the students of Class 1A are way more mature than Shigaraki, and his immaturity cost him today. All Might said proudly. Yes, but a child that has incredible power. I wonder if he got the core counseling that students receive in elementary school. That could explain a lot. Vlad King said in a pensive voice. Maybe so, but it doesn't really matter now. Snipe said, and everyone nodded. There were 72 villains that were arrested after the incident of the USJ. Most of them were just small-time thugs that usually lurk around the back alleys, which is why the students were able to take them out. What worries me is that this man-child got them all to follow his crazy plan, and they viewed him as a real leader. Criminals are starting to feel more pressure now that the world is brimming with heroes. That may be why they were willing to back such a simple-minded villain. Tsukachi suggested, and the heroes nodded their heads. Yes, That does make sense. Vlad King acknowledged. There are plenty of people out there that are looking for a cause to get behind. Snipe admitted, and Present Mike nodded. That certainly is true, but can we get back to the students for a sec? Izuku Aizawa, Eijiro Kurishima, Katsuki Bakugo, and Shoto Todoroki held their own against Shigaraki and Kirojiri. Is there any chance that they could be targeted? That Shigaraki guy seems like the type to hold grudges, and 4 first-year high school students seem like easy targets. Do we have any confirmation that those 4 are truly going to be safe from these people? Present Mike asked as he was worried about his godson. I doubt they would go after them if I'm being completely honest. If anything, Shigaraki seems like the type to ignore the beating they gave him, calling it a fluke. He probably thinks that if they meet again, he could handle them no problem, so he won't waste his time stalking them or whatever. Not to mention that Izuku is the son of 2 pro heroes. Shoto Todoroki is the son of Endeavor, and both Katsuki Bakugo and Eijiro Kurishima aren't going down without a fight. He wouldn't walk away without a scratch if he tried anything. Tsukachi assured Present Mike, who took a sigh of relief. Well, that makes me feel a bit better. Present Mike said, relieved. However, there is something that worries me concerning you All Might. Tsukachi said as he looked at the number 1 hero. Concerning me? What is it? All Might asked, dumbfounded, and Tsukachi sighed. When I was interviewing Izuku Aizawa, he mentioned that he overheard Shigaraki saying something odd after you took out his Nomo. Apparently, he was ranting about how you cheated and that you hadn't gotten weaker at all. Tsukachi informed him, and All Might's eyes widened to that of Saucer's. How could he possibly know of my condition? All Might asked as he was now worried. I'm not sure, but they had to get that information from somewhere. The question is from whom? No one should know besides a couple of people outside of this room. So how exactly could he have gotten this information? It also must be the reason for this attack in the first place. Shigaraki heard you had gotten weaker and figured that he and his small army could take you out and finally be rid of you. But the students were more than his thugs could handle, and you had your strength. His plan fell apart like a house of cards. Tsukachi surmised, and everyone's eyes widened in realization. So this plan, it actually was coordinated if you think about it. Still entirely reckless, but this Shigaraki had a goal in mind. Vlad King said, and Snipe nodded. Yes, but this means that he could try something like this again if he gets another tip. So what can we do? Snipe asked the detective. Well, it is thanks to you heroes that we have time to devote ourselves to this case. So we will expand our investigation and continue to search for the perpetrators who planned this attack. Tsukachi assured the heroes. All Might was stuck in his head thinking about how those villains somehow knew about his condition, or at least were informed of it. The only people that knew were his colleagues, Gran Torino, and his former psychic Sir Naitai. And there was no way that they were stalking him. He was always in his muscle form whenever he was in public. So how could they possibly know? All Might shivered at thinking that this Shigaraki was involved with his arch-nemesis, All for One. A man-child, huh? In some ways, he shares common ground with our students. They both have so much potential. And like our students, I suppose it is possible that someone is guiding this Shigaraki, trying to nurture his malice and villainy. Nizu said in a pensive voice, and All Might grimaced. What Principal Nizu said made sense, and there was only one person on All Might's mind who could be this so-called MSTR. Could All for One really be nurturing this Shigaraki to be his successor or something? The man-child was so reckless and bratty that All Might figured he would not be worthy of his arch-nemesis time. He had been battling All for One for many years, and the old villain was incredibly crafty and patient, the opposite of Shigaraki. All Might found it impossible to believe after he thought he defeated All for One. But then who would be able to give information like that? He didn't know what to believe, but he understood present mixed concerns about those 4 boys. While it didn't seem likely, he would have to keep an eye on those 4 to make sure they were safe. He knew that his time was running out on his one for all quirk, but he still had the resolve to keep the citizens safe, and what happened today just ignited the fire inside him once again. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Was Aizawa and Midnight Child. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to TheDemonHiei for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on fanfiction.net for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe to Zen and Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.